I am very proud and pleased to present the Hillman Prize for Opinion Analysis Journalism to Elie Mystal of The Nation magazine for his work covering the Supreme Court. Now, I have been a reader of Elie for years. I think I even once reached out to him to go on my podcast about movies, that we need to talk about that at some point. Reader of Elie for years, both as someone who writes about the Supreme Court and specifically Supreme Court reform, and as someone who's just always interested to read sharp and penetrating analysis of the court and its decisions. In particular, I think Elie does a masterful job of grounding the work of the court in real human lives and real human stakes. I've often thought that one of the big problems of mainstream court coverage is that it often buys into the conceit of the court itself, the Supreme Court as this elite, arcane body whose decisions can only be deciphered by a group of priests and clerics and the like. A sense that our human intuitions about the decisions of the court, our reactions to the court, are somehow inadequate if we don't also understand the finer points of constitutional law and the specific quirks of each justice. And if you just don't know exactly how Neil Gorsuch thinks, then you should not complain as much. But Elie rejects that, and he emphasizes the extent to which the Constitution is political, that constitutional law is a political enterprise as much as it is a legal one, and that court decisions are open to democratic critique, that they're not things we just have to accept. Again and again, he reminds us that the decisions of the court are ultimately about us and that we have a responsibility and an obligation to critique them, especially when the court runs astray of our democratic traditions, which it does a lot these days. What Elie does especially well, and I say this not just as a fellow journalist, but also as a Black man, is he balances a technical understanding of the law with what it means for the lives of people who aren't necessarily in the halls of power. And he does this without treating the court as this source of our rights. He even will emphasize the extent to which the court has often been an impediment to the things that we value as Americans, not something that's assisted their development. I could very much go on for a while about how much I enjoy Elie's writing and reporting and coverage of the court, and his coverage of court reform as well. But I'm going to conclude, and I'll just say that there's virtually no one covering the Supreme Court who is doing it quite like Elie, and he deserves as much praise as you can throw his way, and even more than that.
Thank you so much. So 19 years ago this week, the week after my birthday, I come home to my relatively recently newlywed wife and I say, I'm pretty sure that I'm about to quit my 6-figure lawyer job and do something else. I don't even know what that's gonna be, but it's not gonna be this. And let me tell you guys, the woman didn't punch me in the face. She didn't flinch. She didn't divorce me on the spot. Instead, she went back to work at Schulte, Roth, and Zabel, one of our sponsors tonight, paid our bills while I found myself. So obviously, thank you very much to her. Thank you very much to the Hillman Foundation. Thank you so much to The Nation. I could not have won this award writing for any place other than The Nation, because only The Nation employs my editor, Lizzie Ratner. The difference between me, a guy who is potentially who is being recognized tonight, and me, a guy you don't know, is Lizzie Ratner. The difference between me, a guy yelling at you on Twitter, and me, a guy getting yelled at by Dick Durbin, is Lizzie Ratner. And the reason why I sound like a professional and honorable Supreme Court reporter, as opposed to sounding like John Paul Marat reading a Supreme Court opinion from Marie Antoinette Amy Coney Barrett, is Lizzie Ratner. One of the problems that we have with the decentralization and democratization of journalism is that too many young journalists do not appreciate the importance of editing, of fact-checking, of having somebody in your life that can tell you no. Folks, I am a columnist. I have won this award for opinion writing, which means that, like many of you in the room, I seek the truth. But I seek the truth through the particular lens of taking my head and shoving it up my own ass as far as it will go, and then surveying the landscape. The heat death of a columnist, and I'm sure we can all name a person that we're thinking of as I say this, the heat death of a columnist is when that person gets to a point in their career or their profession where nobody can tell them no, where nobody can say, hey, that might not be correct, sir, where nobody can call them on their own bullshit. Now, I will continue to be a professional employee journalist as long as Lizzie continues to be my editor, because I can't do what I do without somebody that I trust and love holding me to account and telling me when my Manischewitz joke just isn't that funny. Some people have described my writing as fearless, but I want to let you all know that in this moment, I am scared all the time. Every time I open up my computer, every time I look at my phone, I am terrified. And when I put my fingers on my keyboard, I feel very much like I am taking my entire career in my hands. I feel very much like I am putting my family and my children at risk every single day these days. And I know a lot of you feel the same way. And I would argue that if you don't feel the same way, you're doing it wrong. If you're not afraid in this moment of what they will do to you, you're doing it wrong. If you feel like you can leave this country and come back easily, you're doing it wrong. If you feel like you can go to Washington, D.C. right now and have no chance of getting into a fight, you're doing it wrong. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is the acceptance of fear and doing what we must do anyway. And so I want to thank the Hillman people very much again for this honor. I want to thank everybody in this room for continuing to do what is hard and what is fearful, but what is ultimately courageous. Thank you.